Us, I'm Sensei Marco Lala, and thank you for purchasing my Advanced Concepts and Conditioning Secrets to Grappling and Ground Fighting. In keeping with tradition, I've continued to produce the most comprehensive training videos on the grappling and ground fighting area. On Volume 1, I spent nearly 2 hours explaining the more Western-oriented concepts of grappling. Stemming from amateur wrestling, we worked on takedowns, how to neutralize takedowns, a lot of conditioning drills, especially in the neck area, which is important for escaping techniques. In this sequel, I will cover the more Asian or Eastern-oriented techniques, which include finishing holds, but more precisely techniques that require you to be able to fight effectively off your back, which is an extremely important part of judo and jiu-jitsu. On this videotape, I also explain live fight footage, frame by frame, as I did on my Knockout Any Attacker tape. We'll also use the help of slow motion footage to really break down the details of the techniques so that you have more of an inner understanding of what's happening and not just a superficial view as you see today on a lot of grappling tapes. So sit back, enjoy the videotapes, how I break down the techniques, and then take them with you to the dojo or your training area and continue to improve and train hard. Us. Let us begin with what I call ground enhancement skills. These techniques are done with a partner. What we're trying to work on is to be able to move fluidly on the mat as a boxer would with his footwork techniques. We have to do with our shoulder, back, and hip area. Right now, I'm performing an exercise sometimes referred to as shrimp crawls, or we use the term escape form, because most of the escape techniques and techniques that will keep you from losing your breath on the mat require you to go onto your side as opposed to staying flat on your back. So what I'm doing here is going both forward and backwards, starting out with my knees bent, hands overhead. As I do here, as I push up, I'm going to jackknife my body at the waist area, almost touching my feet. When I go back, I do the complete opposite. My legs are straight out, and as I pull myself in, bending my knees, I straighten my upper body out. As you watch carefully, see here, hands overhead, push off with the feet, jackknifing the body at the waist area, and then doing the opposite, going back. So again, we're looking at developing mobility on the ground, off your back, just like a boxer would as he comes in and out when he throws jabs, hooks, and uppercuts. If you look at it from this angle, you see the knees bent, feet flat, and as I push away, I bend my body, and I do the opposite. I start out with my legs straightened and body bent in order to move backwards. Forward and backward. You'll see what this means exactly with a partner here. Notice the position here as I move up onto my side, as my opponent engages me from the bottom or from my legs. Going backward, you can see here he's engaging me from the top or head position. A slight modification of the escape form involves keeping one leg flat on the mat, as I do here, and pushing off in the same position as I did previously with both legs. This time I'm doing it with one leg. This is going to be important for moving underneath your opponent in order to put him in your guard position, as you'll see in a moment. So everything that I did with 2 feet previously, I have to do now with
one foot. Same upper body action here, moving onto the side. By keeping your back off the mat, your partner or opponent has a difficult time applying the pressure on top of your chest, which is his goal. More pressure on your chest and diaphragm allows you less breathing space, thus causing you to lose your breath or stamina while you're on the ground. So the objective is, as each time that you're pinned or you're being held in a side position or side headlock, the key is to get off of your back and get onto your side so that you can maintain your proper breathing that's necessary. Again, if we look at it from this point of view, one leg is kept flat on the mat. This is the leg that's going to be slid underneath your opponent appropriately to put him into your guard position, or legs around bottom. So in general, what we're trying to do again is develop mobility on the ground. As a striking artist, we learn how to move forward, backward, laterally. We spin to left and right, circle your opponent. On the ground, we have to be able to move away from our attack and into various positions. As you can see here, by flattening the leg out, it allows us to bend the knee and slide it underneath the body, putting him into our legs around bottom position. Again, what's important here is the speed of movement. As he enters into the side hold here, notice how I bump up to the side. Right away, bumping up to the side and almost going into like a fetal type position makes it difficult for him to get a good hold. This is a unique movement that's done when somebody's mounting you and getting his knees up underneath your armpits. The key is to keep his knees down below your waist area so that when you bridge, he moves considerably and you can work on an escape. So what we're doing here basically is using our shoulder blades to move backwards away from our opponent entering into the mount. As he comes in higher, you can see here I'm going to use my shoulder blades to reposition my body to prepare for an escape. Another drill involves dragging your body with just your arms. This is not only an exercise that will tone and strengthen your shoulders and arm area, but what it's doing is showing you or teaching you how to keep a tight position while somebody's attacking you from the top and you happen to be on your stomach. Although this is one of the worst positions to be in a fight, it just may happen that you may find yourself there. So there's a few factors you have to keep in mind. Number one is your elbows must stay tight into your body. With your elbows tight against your side, your palms are put upwards or facing towards your body so that any choking attempts can be stopped by grabbing his forearm. That's why we start from an open palm down position to twisting upward and closing into a fist. Notice here, this is what you do not want to do. Notice how the elbows are kept away from the body. Here, they're tightly held in. Here, they're away from the body, which allows you to be turned over. With your elbows in tight and chin down and palms up, you can try to neutralize any attempt to turn over or choke. In this position, again, you notice here, by keeping it tight, it's difficult for your opponent to get in to turn you over. With it open, he can work on various attacks. He can go for a one-on-one or a two-on-one technique. He can work into arm locks or turnovers from here. The next aspect of this drill, palms up and gripping so that you can neutralize any attempt at naked chokes or even gi chokes. Another ground enhancement drill, we call these hopping movements. These are referred to as kidney hops. Again, the idea is to be able to maneuver quickly, either side to side, laterally, right or left, as an opponent is engaging. Another unique concept to this exercise is to develop an explosiveness in opening your body up in case of a small package type situation here. Now, obviously, strength is going to be a big factor here. But one of the keys is to use your whole body against his grip. I may be able to pry open his hands by using that kidney hop momentum that I developed from my training. Then from here we can work into various types of finishing holds or sliding our knee under and put him in our legs around bottom position. Again, you can see the concept here. The kidney hop requires you to extend your legs, opening your body up, using an explosive action in order to break the grip. This is one of the foundation movements for escaping techniques while on the bottom. It's a shoulder bridge. You're moving side to side on a 45-degree angle from right to left shoulder. You can modify this somewhat by bridging completely up on top of your head and moving right to left. Notice here the shoulders are off the mat. This requires a little bit more neck strength, and it allows the opponent to be lifted up higher off the mat. Here's kind of an example of what's happening here with this 45 shoulder bridge. Now, one of the key factors you see here, when I originally tried to turn him over, he was able to take his arm out and post. But now what I've done is use my head to trap his forearm so that he cannot bring it out to post in the opposite direction. Again, you can see by doing that, by posting, by bridging my head, it allows him to put himself in a very bad position for the turnover. See here, by not putting the head down, his arm can come out and post, make it virtually impossible for me to turn him over. What I must do is get the head to touch the mat so that his arm is trapped, thus leaving him very vulnerable to that side. Then I can work the bridge and turn. Then from here I can work into various repositioning techniques. Now we'll go over some turnover drills, which are extremely important for off-the-back fighting in judo and jiu-jitsu. This is one of the basic movements that incorporate many different aspects. We're starting from a knees down position, placing our right foot towards the inside of his left knee. And we're going to use our opposite knee to pivot on as we lean back. Right foot in, pivoting on the left knee. As I drop back, we have to off-balance our partner. We don't want to just fall straight back. Right knee up, foot inside, pivoting on the left knee, stabilizing his far knee, pulling with the left hand, turning over with the right hand. Instep to the inside of the knee, stopping the other knee, turning him over. In this scenario, I mounted him immediately. I can work into a scarf hold position as well. This is a good drill to practice over and over to get the feel of falling back and controlling simultaneously. Notice the right instep and the left foot working simultaneously. As I turn him over, kick him over with the right foot, I'm controlling his right knee with my left foot. And then I follow up immediately in a pinning position. Now we're looking at modifications of this turnover. Basically, he may be coming in to try to choke me or grab my lapels. I use the escape form to bump onto my side and work one of my insteps in for the turnover, trapping with the opposite foot. In this case, the opposite foot is reaping out the leg rather than pushing the knee out. Here's another modification. I'm controlling his upper body with a one-arm choke position, working into the vertical four-corner hold or mounted position. Choke, break the grip, scoot out using the escape form demonstrated earlier into the turnover. Here's an interesting drill for conditioning the neck area. My instructor told me they used to use this in Japan in the schoolyard as a game, the way we would use hopscotch or some other game here. Who would be choked out first? They would maintain the lapel grips and start choking each other out at the same time till one person gave up. You each find your proper hand positioning and then work on choking at the same time. Now we're looking at sit-outs and rolls, another very important aspect of turning the tables on your opponent. Here we're looking at the solo application of the movement. I'm in the hands and knees position. I'm going to take my right hand, place it over my left hand, bring my right knee to my left knee, and turn over. Here I'm doing it in the opposite direction. I'm going to take my left hand, bring it over my right hand. My left knee to my right knee, and I'm grabbing with the opposite hand as I turn over. Now we're speeding it up, working right and left side. You'll see why we're bringing the knee over and the hand over to facilitate the turn of the roll. And we're looking here. As I bring the hand over, I trap the hand in his wrist, bring the knee in, and work the roll. What I do now is work right and left side, since as I turn him over, he will be on that position. Simplifying the drill. Now in this case, you'll see that I reach over with the opposite hand to trap his wrist. Notice in this position here, I'm going to use my right hand to trap his left wrist as I turn him over to the reverse scarf hold position. Here's a look at it from a different point of view. Notice as he attacks, I bring my right knee in, creating a leverage there or an off-balancing that allows me to turn him over, regardless of how heavy he is. If I just tried to power it over and keeping my knees wide apart, it would never work. So what I'm trying to do is kind of like spin or coil myself in towards his body to take him out. Now here's a modification of it. Instead of reaching across with the opposite hand, I can trap it with my armpit and take him over. This is probably what more commonly would happen in the match. What happens here, he may trap my arm so that I cannot reach across to grab his opposite wrist. So I will just trap it with the arm on the same side. From here, I reach across, my left hand trapping the wrist, and turn him over. We can also use this from a head-to-head position. He may be trying to turn me over from here. I'm going to trap either side. I have to sense which side is the weak side that I can take him over on. Trap with the armpit and then roll out on top of him. As I do this turnover, I have to post out with my hands and feet to make sure that he cannot turn me back over and then work on trying to spin up on top of his body. Or in this position here, maneuver into a headlock. Here's a sit-out that works into a bridge, turn, and arm lock. These drills not only are very important for groundwork, they're also extremely good workouts for cardiovascular and toning. What I'm doing now is stepping out with my left leg, grabbing with my left hand, and then sliding through with my right side, almost as if I'm sliding into a baseball. Here we're looking at it on the opposite side. Step out with the right leg, grab the opponent's wrist, hand and then slide out with my left foot. As I bridge, notice I try to keep that head and neck contact as I bridge my body, and you'll see why. Trap the arm, sit out, drive my head back into his lower back in order to flatten him out straight. I notice most students If they do not bridge and arch their back, the opponent may land on his side or be able to spin onto his back, not allowing you to apply this technique correctly. Trap the arm, left foot comes out, sit out with the right leg, arch the back, and then you can work into an armpit arm lock. Here we're looking at it from here, from the rear. Left foot steps out, slide through with the right foot, and work into an arm lock. The key here is that I trap his arm. You'll notice what's going to be difficult is that if he actually makes contact with his hand, if he grips his hands together, it's going to be very difficult. That's where you can go with the previous turnover. This technique is done most effectively when the opponent just puts his arm around you and you can trap it. Here's an interesting drill for more ground enhancement techniques. My instructor likes to use this drill with me in order to tire me out before we take our lesson. Begin from a seated position and move to your left side in a scarf hold position. Then we move to the opposite side. So basically we're going from right side to left side. Notice how I adjust the foot on each direction. Now we're adding a bridge to it. So we're moving from right, left, and bridge. Left, bridge, right. Now we move to the stomach. All these have fighting implications to them. Here we're looking at a side headlock position to a bridge to the stomach. Now ideally one of the best ways to practice this is to have your partner call out left side, right side, bridge, stomach, and move according to his directions. As you do this for several minutes, you'll see the tremendous benefit in stamina and also body positioning and mobility on the ground. Now we'll go into a series of techniques that will help enhance your fighting ability off your back. We're starting here with basically sitting down, turning your feet into circular positions inside and outside. Now, the objective in judo and jiu-jitsu is to make your legs as necessary or easy to use as your hands. You should have the dexterity in your hands and feet on an equal basis. So we're looking at bicycle kicks, kick-outs, figure eights, circles, all off your back, allowing you the mobility and the effectiveness to use your legs as effectively as you would use your hands. This particular drill corresponds with this partner drill. Notice here what he's doing is he's grabbing my pant leg or going after my legs in order to control them, either to pass them or whatever. And what I do is use these circular movements that we just did to control his arms. Now, of course, in a real match, these are going to be very quick, momentary, transitional type movements. But we must break them down for drill purposes so that we can build up the dexterity. Now, you can do something like this with your hands quite easily, but because our legs are limited in use for walking or just kicking if you're into martial arts, we have to learn how to use them effectively and controlling your opponent. So again, what we're doing here is basically working on circling his arm, maintaining contact, and pushing away. The kick-outs that we did, they correspond to you possibly trying to neutralize his attempt to strike you. Let him work right side and left side. Make him work on grabbing with one hand and faking punches with the other hand to get the idea of what it would feel like to control with your feet. Then you can add gloves to make it a little bit more realistic. How to get him to really strike at you and see how you can use your legs in order to neutralize the strikes. Obviously, that will be necessary for you to work into another technique. The next drill, we work on scooting and figure four locking our legs. Notice each time I do the technique, I scoot out to the side. I'm not facing the camera directly. I want to move at almost a 90-degree angle to the camera. This would be the direction my opponent is facing me. Now, as you'll soon realize, all these off-the-back drills are incredible abdominal workouts. Now we're looking at a technical aspect of the drill that we just did. Basically what I'm doing is controlling my opponent, scooting out on an angle. Notice when I apply the technique, I'm almost at a 90-degree angle to my opponent. I'm not directly underneath him. Then figure fouring, applying the leg choke. Now normally I have a difficult time using leg chokes because of the length of my legs. Shorter, stockier individuals have a difficult time utilizing leg chokes, although they are possible. Longer, lankier individuals and players have a very effective weapon in leg chokes if practiced diligently. So again, what may seem to be just a simple solo exercise has many fighting applications, as you've just seen here with just the leg turns off your back and the scooting out. Now we're looking at combining the two drills. So we have the leg manipulation here, or the leg circles as we did in the beginning, notice here, and then going into a leg choke. So you can start combining the techniques. It could be the result of him grabbing your leg or throwing a punch at you and pushing the arm away. So if you feel that you have to practice with a partner to improve in grappling, that is pretty much the case. However, there are quite a few exercises that you could do on your own to help develop the dexterity and the mobility and the completeness that you need to develop ground fighting techniques. Here we're looking at a move very similar to like a breakdancing technique. I'm going to use the momentum of my leg spinning to bump up onto my shoulder. You'll see a couple of variations and applications of this movement.
Cut.
Now obviously in the case of fighting, you don't want to do this onto the top of your head as a breakdancer would, but the key is to go from your back position to your front position here.
Cut.
Now in this case, I'll be in a lot better position to try and escape. Now you'll notice the key here is to move and bump quickly. That's why you have to get the leg turning movement, the explosiveness of the spin. You'll see why there. If you do not bump up quickly, he can prevent the turnover by tightening his hold. Another application of this movement, as he engages from the side, remember the key is to do this before he solidifies his hold. I can work into a turnover. As you can see more clearly here, as he's engaging from the side, I very quickly want to use the leg movement, bridge up onto my shoulder, and then work the right on top of left gripping technique into the takedown. This is very similar to a single leg takedown, except you're already down on the ground. You're going to drive with your shoulder and head, pulling in with your arms. On the first volume, you see quite a discussion on sprawling versus leg attacks. Now we're looking at angling them off. Instead of attacking a double, he's attacking with a single, either right or left side. So you have to be able to move appropriately to his attack. Here we're looking at a straight-in attack. And now he's attacking one side as I sprawl to the opposite side. You have to get the feel of what's more appropriate. If he sprawls from your right leg, you move back to your left side, or vice versa. Another interesting drill. In the first tape, we worked on doing this from the stomach. Now what we do is back-to-back, working the spin. Again, this is very important in case you come off of a throw or a takedown where you may have fell and now you're scrambling for position. You have to be able to move effectively by just sensing where his body is. In this case, you can see I cannot see him because I'm looking up, but at the same time, by just feeling where I am relative to him, back to back, I can move into appropriate position.
Stop.
Another drill involves the escape form that we did earlier on our own with the partner. As he moves to right and left side, you appropriately move to your right and left side, trying to control his entry. You can see here, as he moves to the left, my body does the escape form to the left side, and vice versa. You can work it up and down. You can stay on one side. You can change sides.
Cut.
These may seem like very incidental techniques when it comes to ground fighting. When I first started getting to this area, I spent hours and hours on my own just working on this so I become comfortable with moving on my back. Here I'm slowing it down so you can more clearly see what the purpose of this is. The idea is that as somebody enters into your right or left side, you want to immediately go into the almost fetal type position onto your side. There's another interesting movement as he tries to pass my leg. Now obviously my partner's objective is not to get caught in my guard, so he's going to try to pass my leg by controlling them and trying to swing around into the side hold position or mount position. What I'm trying to do basically is maintain my control off the back and between my legs. Here we're looking at a slightly toned down version where I specifically make him work to the right side and left side. And again, just as I would standing, I want to make sure that I stay in a relatively comfortable position face to face with him. I didn't want him to get to my back or too far to the right or left side so that he can enter into a side hold or mount position. And of course, keeping in tradition with my original tape, I'll throw in another interesting neck drill. Please don't try this at home until you have sufficient training and conditioning. Now I'll move into some fighting techniques, some live fight footage broken down as I did on my knockout video. Now this was early on in my judo career. As I began, I even had a very limited knowledge of the rules, so there's, for example, in this match, quite a bit of stoppage, as I apparently did something that was not legitimate in competition. Here we're looking at a basic takedown. As I started working to bring him into the guard position, he stood up. Now in judo competition, when that happens, it is broken up and started over again, almost like a stalemate in wrestling. So basically, as we were looking for maintaining the grip or getting the grip, we try to look for the ideal throwing position, which is the objective of judo. Here we're looking at what to me appeared to be a clean throw, takedown, kosoto type of movement. As I swing in, tried to work into an arm lock. Again, by the opponent not wanting to engage into that, it stopped automatically. One of the objectives is to catch the grip. There's an initial fighting for grip, and then from there, trying to work into a takedown. Now again, we're looking at a situation where there was a stalemate in terms of nobody was initiating any action, although it seemed to be a very brief encounter at the time. Now, if there's one thing that I'm trying to get across to you as a martial artist is, if you want to get proficient in any area, you have to test yourself in various different types of competition. Basically, here we're looking at a duck under into a takedown. Most of these movements will be explained later on in the videotape, specifically. Here, as I swung over, applying a choke, the match was stopped only because the lapel of the gi was going across the opponent's mouth and not his throat, which is illegal in judo. Again, not quite knowing too much of the rules, I was basically trying anything in order to win the match at the moment. So basically looking at several times the match could have been over right now, but in the spirit of competition, we move on, trying to build up the experience that's necessary. An attempt of an inner thigh throw. As he stood up, I was working on a turnover arm lock. However, again, in judo competition rules, if he stands up and does not engage you in mat work, it begins again. Now, it's interesting to know, an objective that I have for my students and myself is that as a well-rounded martial artist, you should be able to walk into virtually any type of scenario and do well. Whether or not you can defeat everybody is not the objective if you're trying to develop personal martial arts skills. What we're trying to do is to be able to be competent in many different areas, whether it be striking, standing or ground grappling, and so forth. So if you have the time and the ability to train, you should experience various forms of competition. Again, as we engage here, grip is tantamount to applying proper technique. As we're looking at here, another objective in judo there, that was a pretty interesting throw there. He worked into a sleeve throw, but one of the things that happens with judo is a lot of the throws can lead into a situation like this. Now again, the problem is you only have a limited amount of time to apply a finishing technique. So as you can see there, the action is stopped before any attempt in trying to break the grip into the arm lock was applied. Now there is an interesting point that I make to people. Although you have to try to get the finishing hold quickly on the ground in judo, that makes a lot of sense when it comes to street fighting. You may not have a half hour to tire your opponent out on the mat in order to apply a technique. So the objective to try to finish your opponent immediately when you take down with the finishing hold has a lot of self-defense merit to it. Now, as you can see there, what I did was basically make him take me down to the mat to work into a turnover position, and here ending with the pin, which in judo requires a 30-second holding. Now, obviously, in a real fight, his friend may have come over with a baseball bat and ended the match, or because there would be no way that a match would be going for a half hour on the mat. So these are things to take into consideration when you're training in competition or whether you're training for self-defense. So again, you have to keep an open mind when it comes to competition. Rather than putting styles down, experience them and add them to your arsenal. In the spirit of Bruce Lee, I think that's what he was trying to emulate as a martial artist. Here we're looking at a feeble attempt to take me down, which put me in a position to basically just control him on the top. Here we're freeing the leg. Now again, we're looking at a situation where he did not quite want to engage in mat work, so according to rules, it stopped and started over again. That can be kind of frustrating, but again, it's interesting to experience many different types of grappling. There we're looking at basically, which is a textbook shoulder throw or ippon seoinage. Now we'll move into some analysis or breakdown of technique. Here we're looking at, again, grip fighting. Here, although I felt you would not want to do this with a very competent judoka because the match would probably be over by now. He has me in what's called a scarf hold or side headlock position. As I was attempting to choke him with the lapel, I stopped and then changed strategy and worked on turning over my opponent and then working into a choke from this position. Here, and I'm now going through a series of choking techniques. I'm changing from lapel to naked chokes, and then now adding the leg to enhance the choking technique, and finally finishing, getting the submission. So what I tried to do is take him down so that he put me in the scarf hold. Again, to do this with a very competent judo player is not a good idea, because this is a very strong position. Since I could not get the finish from this position, as I tried here with the lapel, I had to change strategy and then work on escaping from the side. So what I did, resulting from an unsuccessful attempt to choke from here, I changed my strategy and worked on escaping from the position by turning him over using the bridge and roll technique described earlier on the videotape. As he turns over, he attempts to spin away from me, so I have to control him with my legs, getting my heels in, and then from there, I'm in the position to work on what's called chain attack, or using a series of techniques to finish him. Again, you'll see a change of strategy. Instead of trying to finish from here, which is very difficult, I worked on his standard turnover. Leg comes over, and then as he goes to spin on his stomach, I follow him, keeping the heels in, and then working on various finishing techniques. Notice, this is basically what I did. I went from your basic sliding collar choke to the one-arm collar choke. He had very good defensive skills, so I had to change from there and go to a variation of the collar choke, which just applies pressure to the back of the neck. Since he was trying to turn into the choke, which is a very strong defensive movement, I then tried to add the help of the leg in order to control his head and thus apply the finishing lapel choke. Here's a close-up of what's happening here. You notice I'm neutralizing the head with the leg and then applying the lapel choke with the left hand. In this scenario here, we have a very good throwing person. I tried to blend with the throw, thus putting him in between my legs. Now again, notice as he's pulling away, Since that happens, the match is stopped in judo competition. However, some strategy you may have tried to use is to work a takedown from here. Notice how you try to control the opponent with the legs. And in this case, I'm looking for the ankles in order to pull them in as I push away with my heels, always controlling his upper body as I do there with my left hand. Then from here I can work into mounting quickly as he's thrown back. Now this can be done on an angle with one leg, or in this case I try to get two legs and come up. Then from here you have your series of finishing holds. Another possibility is the leg can be hooked up from underneath, working into a leg lock. Again, this is illegal in judo application. However, as you enter into this, notice you're pushing away with the left leg, coiling his leg with your right leg, and then applying the ankle lock. Another drill from this application, again, if he's engaging you with strikes, make sure you have proper defensive movements with your legs, as we shown earlier with the circling drills, or blocking with the hands in order to set him up for the takedown by grabbing the ankles. Now from here you can work on leg locks and other types of techniques. I like to practice this drill with my students because it is a freestyle sparring type application, but it is controlled in order to experiment with your bottom position fighting. Notice each time as he throws the techniques, I'm figuring out how to deflect and set up for the takedown. Whether I follow up with a pinning move or finish with a leg lock technique. Here I'm controlling the arm and then working on an arm lock application. If that's unsuccessful, again, you have to see how you can blend from arm lock attempt to leg lock attempt. Here we're looking at a situation from the bottom. As I'm being pinned, I notice he's circling around, so I'm going to use that for the turnover and pin attempt. This is the escape form or scooting out motion that we discussed right in the beginning of the tape, the drill. Notice I'm going to use my left hand to keep his hips away from me as he tries to flatten me out. We're going to use a faking motion to get him to push his body weight forward. So notice here, by reaching over, grabbing his belt, and pushing away, he's now driving in towards me. I'm going to use that body momentum to then turn him over into a pinning technique. One way to neutralize that is by controlling his legs so that he cannot turn over. Also, from the pinning position, obviously not legal in judo competition, is to work on striking techniques from the top pin position. We can go with elbows, or we can go with the more standard finishing holds to the far arm. For a complete breakdown of finishing techniques, you may want to look at the neck manipulation and arm lock series developed on other videotapes. Here we're looking at a takedown into a turnover. Again, sometimes it works being aggressive. What I lacked in standing experience, I try to make up for in aggressiveness and mat work application. Here we're looking at basically what happened as he was entering to grip. Traditionally, I decided to duck under and go to the rear and get behind. Gene LaBelle is a strong advocate of getting behind your opponent because that cuts his weapons to virtually none. Now the reason we may use, or I may use, a lot of unorthodox stuff is facing somebody that probably has just as much competition experience as I have experience in the martial arts. So we have to change around. Now notice here, when I was applying the choke, I could not get to his neck. So you may want to use alternate strategies, which is attack his jawline, as I do here. As he's protecting the neck, you can work right into the head area by attacking the jaw from the side or the front, or working the bridge of the nose and the eye sockets. Obviously all illegal movements in judo because you cannot attack the face directly. In this application, you'll see an attempt of uchimata or inner thigh throw. Now, as he comes around, now you can see in competition there, he does get a fraction of a point for that. However, you can see as the positioning continues, we get an ideal choking opportunity from the bottom. Now, basically what happened is we ended up where I was basically riding him. As he tried to spin away, I slid around to underneath, putting him in my guard position, and then working on the lapel choke. This lapel strangle is a modification of the sliding collar choke, fully described on the Neck Manipulation Volume 2 videotape. The objective here is to take the loose lapel, bring it across his throat, neutralizing his shoulder, and then squeezing and arching my back. Now, defensively, what the opponent on top may want to do is to try to either duck the head out under my left arm or to grab the lapel and keep his body and head tight into my body so that I can get the leverage that I need to expand the lapel. In this next segment, we're looking at a takedown that works off of the right leg. As he advances, I readjust my gripping technique so I can work on a basic Kosoto type of movement or outer hooking technique. Now, the objective is to try to time it with a movement. In judo, we learn to off-balance our opponent so that we can simplify the throw or use leverage. However, we may have to force the movement or cause the movement in the interim of fighting. This particular throw you'll see here is referred to as a switch. Now notice here, I'm going to fake a forward throw and then go to the rear. Now the key to that is to get your opponent committed to defending against your forward throw, which could be one of many different techniques. It could be an inner thigh throw, as I demonstrate here, or a shoulder throw. So I'm trying to get him to put his weight forward in order to defend against the movement and then switch behind, working the rear throw. Sometimes it's called a valley drop throw. So again, sometimes it's also referred to as the switch in international competition. I fake with a forward throw and then come to the rear for the takedown. Now after the takedown, one of the key factors is you'll notice quite often this is the first thing I try to do immediately when a person is on his stomach or we land on the floor together, is to get behind and get the heels in to flatten him out. That should become an automatic instinct. As you see here, I did the switch, and as he landed on his stomach, immediately work into that particular movement. Now you can see there that as he tried to stand up, I tried to work into an arm lock position from here. But again, by not engaging in fighting and just stepping back, is a lot of times, a lot of judo players use that in order to stop the groundwork to continue and start over from standing, which is one of the strong points in judo. Here we're looking at a duck under and an arm and leg assisted takedown, immediately going into the hooks and the turnover. Basically, we're looking at a duck under, hand assisted throw with an outer reaping motion. As you can probably tell from a lot of the matches here, the footage, I do have a preference for groundwork. Because of my height and weight, I think that's more appropriate for me as far as self-defense goes. However, after studying for several years, the standing has become quite intriguing and very applicable to self-defense applications. Now, as you're probably well aware of, most fights do end up on the ground, even as much as 90%. However, virtually 100% start on your feet, so you have to be equally balanced in both standing and ground fighting, as well as striking and grappling. Here again, we're looking at another attempt at an inner thigh throw, and then what I try to do is a turnover arm lock. So this is the throw that was attempted, the inner thigh throw. Probably one of the highest scoring throws in international judo competition. Now we're looking at a defensive motion here, which is basically kind of a duck under or slide by, and then using the hip to push away his hip so that he cannot get the entry or the depth that he needs for the throw. Here's an attempt with an arm lock to come over. Most of the time, when a person finds himself in the hands and knees position, it's critical that his arms do not remain extended outward as they do here, leaving him susceptible to these types of techniques. Immediately they're put inside, elbows in tight, either flattened out or you try to get out of that position immediately by spinning away. In this situation, you're looking at a setup for a sleeve throw here, which is very effective. I was actually lucky that it was not called a full point. However, you'll notice a lot of judo throws seem to coincidentally lead into beautiful finishing possibilities. Here we're looking at various ways to try to break the grip that your opponent may have as he's trying to defend against a crossbody arm lock. This goes against a pressure point. Although it's very difficult to use, what you're trying to do is use the bones of your forearm to place pressure on his bicep and forearm muscle by squeezing his arm together as you pull inward. This may work, however, most people have a very high tolerance for pain in a situation like this, so you have to work on some more feasible methods. Depending on the type of grip, you can attack his wrist, which coincidentally is illegal in judo because they do not allow wrist techniques. So even from there, you got to modify the movements. That is why we look at alternative methods. Most people ask me exactly what I do teach. I teach how to fight effectively in my school, incorporating various systems. However, to say that, you have to back it up with experience in these systems. Notice now what I'm looking at is strictly, I'm trying to take away his leverage point by bringing the arms up high over his head to break the grip with pure power. In this case, I'm attacking his opposite arm and applying an arm lock from this position. You have to be able to work a series of movements because something may give. You may try one and another may come available, or vice versa. We're looking at the pressure point activity, working against the wrist joint, bringing the hand above the head, applying the arm locks. Obviously, you can strike from this position if you want to expand upon the arsenal using the hands, elbows, feet. You can switch over trying to apply more pressure by adding the strength of your legs into the movement. Or you can do something more commonsensical, which is to pry the hands apart with your own feet. The idea here being that your legs are stronger than any grip or arm can be, although I have practiced with and played with some individuals whose arms probably were stronger than both of my legs put together. And then finishing hold. Now we're looking at a movement here. I was in a little bit of trouble as I was on my back and he was entering, but I used a scooting motion to get my knee in quickly. He puts me in his guard. As I pass it, I go to mount, and obviously being experienced, you'll notice how he spins onto his stomach. In competition, you can get away with that. When there's striking involved, it's a different story. Notice here, I was in this position here from a simple sweeping motion. Rather than have him engage into the side hold, I immediately circled in, getting my legs around him. That is a critical factor when you're doing groundwork, is to try to get into comfortable positions. What you want to do is narrow down the positions that you can work in and then get to those positions when you're on the mat. Now the way I work the turnover is by neutralizing his arm with my head and then working the turnover from there. If you want to go back to the fight footage, you'll see more clearly exactly what has happened. As he tried to neutralize me from this top position, we worked on trapping the arm, grabbing his belt, and then doing a turnover by pushing at the hip area. Now as I was in the top position in his guard, we work on escaping the movement. Notice the key is to pop out that one leg first because he had a very tight closed guard position. Now notice what you have to do is increase your base here so that he can't turn you over. My left hand is used to pop the knee out over his thigh area. This is important because he's still relatively strong from this position. I use the left hand to pop the knee out. Then from there, we can drive the knee either straight across his body or in this case, over the same side into mounted position. Now with the next stage, from here you can work on strikes if you want to elaborate on the possibilities. You can use the straight punches to the jaw, palm heel strikes, roundhouse strikes with the knuckle, very similar to the roundhouse punches described on the Karate Boxing Connection video, or choking him in order to get his arms away from his face so I can apply striking techniques. Now, don't think that just mounting somebody and trying to throw strikes and finishing locks are going to make you a better fighter. Once you deal with somebody that knows how to move on the bottom, it's very difficult to apply any of these techniques as he tries to turn you over. Again, you can see here as I keep going into various strikes, trying to control his upper body, working the elbow techniques. So we're basically working off of our striking arsenal as we incorporate the judo and jiu-jitsu hold downs. Now these are things the average person may do while he's in that position. Try to push you away or grab your hands or try to grab your neck, which will obviously put you in very bad positions. Now again, as you can see, as he grabs and tries to turn over, if I don't open up my knees, I'm basically going to be spinning onto my back, putting him in my guard. An alternative to that is to allow enough space in between to get him to spin onto his stomach, so that then I can work on the same strikes or finishing applications from the rear. Basically what I did is, as I sensed the turning attempt, I opened the knees, allowing him to turn inside of my legs, thus maintaining the top position or the control position. So again, you can see here more clearly, rather than keep my knees tightly held together, you can see here as I maintain or get into the mount position, allowed him to spin underneath me rather than squeezing the mount, allowing me to turn on my back. This application here is extremely important for effective groundwork. It's controlling and maintaining your position. Now in judo, it's very common to roll onto your stomach in order to stop a match. As long as he doesn't fight back, he will not be able to continue the match. However, in the street, developing that type of false sense of confidence can be very dangerous. Now keep in mind, just because you may find yourself in this position, don't develop that false sense of confidence. If you get sloppy, as I did here, he may be able to turn it over and the chess game starts over again. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and again, thank you for purchasing my instructional products. Remember, the way is in training, and you will never be able to achieve if you don't try.